Hi, thanks for joining us on the AFG Weekly Update. Today we have Bart Singleton from Doctors Wealth Care to talk to us about disability insurance in preparation of Disability Awareness Month. Bart, we really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today.
Yeah, excited to be here. I wish you guys would have told me we are going to be on camera. I dressed for the golf course today, of course.
Oh, that's
But
all
thank
right.
you. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all right. We like to keep things casual. We like to keep the information relevant, and appearance is definitely not the important part. It's more the content.
That's right.
Alliance Financial Group is committed to putting out the most relevant financial content in a timely manner. If you're interested in joining the financial services industry, give our team a call. We love adding good, talented people to our team at all times of the year. Click the link in our description to apply. Now back to the podcast. So Bart, tell us about how you got into working in the disability space.
I would say not on purpose. I definitely got into the physician space. We were very excited to enter into that space. Love that field. I love everything about the business of medicine. And what we we recognize, or what I recognized really early on, was that topic just became such a maybe a misunderstood, under talked about topic that sort of just kind of came in out of left field. It wasn't something I was as aware of coming out from another direction. We were more engaged in the investment side and getting everyone set up from a cash flow perspective, working with their student loans. And as I was learning this career, all of a sudden it's oh my gosh, disability insurance is maybe the number one early topic that a lot of these physicians want to talk about. So really, it was driven a lot from the client end. As I learned more on the topic, really started to realize, wow, this shouldn't just be a client driven topic. This is something that advisors need to spend time on. That if you're not working in that space enough, you might be leaving your clients for, you know, a situation where an unexpected event is changing their lives.
Yeah. Why are physicians the kind of leading candidate for income replacement? What is it that draws them to that coverage, and what is it that really makes what you do special in the space?
Yeah, I always joke that when you're working with physicians, it's if they come out of the womb wanting disability insurance, right? And in the rest of, I would say, traditional financial planning spaces, you don't have people asking you to get disability insurance. Usually that's something the advisor has to make sure it's in there. So I think for physicians, it's a combination of the fact that they're working every day with people that didn't plan on being there seeing them. And so I think it's hard to say that's not going to be, that couldn't be me, that won't happen to me, because they're seeing that constantly. And I think the second part then is, yes, there are situations where our physicians will own practices, start practices, and have a scenario where someone else is working and making money, and they can kind of sit back and collect because of the efforts of others. But I would say 90+% of our clients are, they have to show up to put, bread on the table. If they don't
Right.
show up for work, the paycheck stops. Um, I think it's a combination of those two things, that their fears coming out of training, right? So you go to these, as a physician, and you go to all this training, all this headache and heartache to get through, and I think you're just sitting there, and it's like, okay, what could happen to make all of this change from a success to a failure?
Right.
And I think that just hits them in the face, right? And it's, all right, I have to make sure that I'm taken care of if I get sued, and I have to make sure I'm taken care of if I get sick. And I think that's one of our biggest messages, that it's getting sick, right? We all think we can prevent something like an injury. We can prevent going and doing something dangerous. We can prevent driving like an idiot. We can, well, prevent driving in Florida maybe, or
Right.
whatever state that might, in New York, right?
Right.
But you start thinking of something like a sickness or an illness, and you realize that's just whether or not it's my day. We can't prevent that
Right.
fully at all.
And I think even with physicians, even when you look at just basic injuries that other occupations don't view as something that's taking them out of the workplace. You talk about something like a basic slip and fall, or a physician or a surgeon getting their hand caught in a door.
Yeah.
And these are things that can completely debilitate them from doing their job, not so much doing any other job.
Right. Right. And I think what we can all recognize is that the level of training that these physicians go through to be able to do their jobs, you start to realize that, okay, not just anyone can do that. You have to have an exceptionally high functioning physical, mental, um, everything has to be there. And if anything slips, right? What I have everyone question is, okay, if that slipped, what would you want that person working for you if it's one lawsuit away from shutting down the department, the hospital, you can't make mistakes in that world. And so I think where that then leads when we're looking at and talking about disability insurance is exactly as you said. Like they might be able to go work 90% of other jobs that are out there, might be able to go work very high level jobs doing that, but they may not be able to work their job. And ultimately, we see it every day. A lot of these physicians did not get into that field just to go collect a paycheck. Sure, there are some, right? Of course, you're gonna have some that hate the field, they hate everything about it,
Right.
and that's gonna pay them well, so they're gonna get it done. But a vast majority of them are just wonderful people that want to go and make a good in the world. And so it's about doing their job for the community that they want to support. And when it comes to something like disability insurance, that becomes such an important factor in it, is that we have to make sure that we're helping these physicians not just get protected from being able to go work any job or any occupation, or if something happened, could they still admit patients to the hospital, or could they go into a slightly different specialty, or do something slightly different. They don't want to do that. And I think the important piece is we need to help them secure coverage where if they can't do their physical duties, if they can't make sure that whatever it is that makes up their day to day, they can't do that, we've got to make sure they're still protected.
Thank you for joining us today. Through our shorts and through our full length content, we try to put out the most relevant material for our viewers, for potential advisors, for people in the industry, or just anybody with financial interest in general. If anything resonated today that you want more information on, go ahead and click the link below me. Click on Talk to a Financial Professional, and one of our professional advisors will reach out to you and have a one on one conversation with your personal situation. Now back to the podcast. Can you dive into that a little bit? Because a lot of people that I talk to will say stuff like, I have coverage through work.
Yeah.
And I get that benefit. It's provided for me. And I don't think enough people understand the difference between their group, which is kind of an any occupation definition, and something that's provided by an individual carrier, or something that you're providing, which is a very specific own occupation
Right.
definition, even to the point, especially in the medical world, where they're breaking you out by risk classes in the medical profession.
Yeah, the group coverage, group disability insurance is an interesting animal, because there's obviously inside of that there's many different levels of what you can find. There's many different, let's just stay with physicians. There's many different healthcare systems that will choose to spend more money on their staff, and then there's others that will choose to spend less money, right? And so one of the first things that I try to tell everyone, if they go through a situation and they're having a hard time actually making a claim with their group disability insurance, right? Their initial reaction is they're mad at the insurance company. I personally don't like that, right? I would guess that insurance company offered other plans to the hospital that the hospital's like, yeah, we don't want to spend that,
Right.
right?
It became
So
a budget issue rather
became
than
a budget issue, right?
taking care of your people.
So
Right.
so part A is I'd prefer people look at it for what it is, right? It's a group benefit. It's something that the employer is choosing. Do we want to, if we spend money here, is this going to help us retain and attract better employees? Well, the first challenge that I think individuals face, right, of just getting an employer to get them coverage is, how much do the individuals actually know and understand about that policy? So Mike, if you're my employer and I have no idea how this stuff works, I just know whether or not we have it or not.
Right.
What is the incentive for you to spend more money to get me good coverage, to opt for the better one that the same company might offer, as opposed to the cheaper one?
Yeah, very little.
Maybe it's not there.
Right.
Right. And so you then look at it and say, okay, if there's a benefit person walking in saying, okay, hospital, here's the best way to spend your money to attract and retain the best employees, is disability insurance the way you're going to go? And I think far too often the answer is no. You know, maybe money's better spent somewhere else in order to do that.
Well, and I think just in the industry as a whole, not even in the medical industry, but just in people's perception, the first question that most of my clients ask or whenever they go on job interviews for a new career is, what's the 401k, and is there a match, and what is it?
Right.
Like, people are predisposed to thinking that that's kind of the gold standard of benefits,
Yeah.
and they don't even make it down to things like the disability and the health
Sure.
insurance. And when you think about it, if you're using one of those insurance policies, the impact on you could be to the tune of gigantic multiples of what your match would ever be.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And to that extent, I mean, there's many policies that will say before they have to pay you, you have to exhaust
Right.
those other options that you
Right.
put out there. And so I think the way that I want individuals to look at group disability insurance, not that it's good, not that it's bad. I mean, we want to actually understand what it's there. But the first problem really is with group benefits is it's not a permanent forever. You know you're going to have this, right? So with our clients, they move jobs, right? They
Well, especially in the resident world.
yeah,
How many residents take their full-time job at the hospital that they're working at?
yeah, small percentage.
Right.
Yeah, very small percentage. So you're moving job to job. You don't know what's going to be there. So odds are people aren't staying at one job for the rest of their life. And then B, that company, if you look at your benefits, every new benefit season, how often is it like, hey, we're keeping everything. Everything's
Right.
the same.
Right.
There's always something changing.
Right.
Right. So that's the second part. So the first decision a person has to make is, okay, can I rely on this piece that they have? And the first thought I want them to have is, okay, yes, that's true. Can you rely on that? But what if you choose to leave your job? What if they choose to change your benefits? Who knows, right? What if the insurance company chooses to change rates, and maybe that causes them to change benefits? So I think that's the first question I try to ask people. And then the second is just understanding how group disability insurance is formulated to get an idea of typically what it's like, right? And I think the key components are, when you have a group disability insurance policy at most hospitals, your health history really doesn't matter. And that's fantastic in a way, but that group disability insurance company, they're taking on a certain level of risk because they have to insure everyone that walks in there. Now, when I go lecture at residency programs, I don't bring in vegetables. I don't bring in fruit. I bring in pizza, and I bring in food that they want to eat, right? So physicians may or may not be the healthiest group of people. All kidding aside, right? But no, so that healthcare system has to insure all of them, and so there's a level of risk they're taking, right? When we try to get our individual clients coverage, that insurance company is digging in so deep into their health history, they know exactly what they're dealing with, right? So you've got all this extra risk. Second, you look at it from a standpoint of cost, right? The reality is, when you look at the cost to the healthcare system per individual, or what those policies cost, they're making a fraction, or they're charging a fraction of what an individual would have to pay to get their own coverage.
Right.
Now, in a way, you'd think of that as hey, that's fantastic, right? My stuff at work is, I get that, it's cheap, it's there, right? So that's the second component, right? A person would be willing to, or the insurance company has to take more risk, make less money, right, compared to the other side of the individual side. And then lastly, if I start asking someone to say, okay, so let's think of what you know of insurance companies. If you were the insurance company, would you be willing to do all that, but then still offer the same exact coverage that you would on the group side or the individual side? You might think twice about it, right? So you're taking all that extra risk. You're not making as much money potentially, and going there. So what I just want everyone to think about, and it's not one size fits all, it's not everything's the same, but inside of that space, you have to understand that there's there's things up against these group insurance carriers to make that coverage as good as maybe even they would want it to be. That they don't get to pick that, right? That the insurer has to pick that. And even then, when they're opting for some of the best coverage they can find, how good does it necessarily get in most instances when they're up against those challenges?
Right. And I think that's really important kind of on the individual side of the insurance is you're talking about talking to these residence programs. If you think about it, when you're thrown into a pool of doctors, how many of your 28 to 35-year-old residents are less healthy than the 70-year-old physician that's about to retire?
Yeah, right.
And they're all sharing in the same premium
Yeah.
in that pool. So for these residents, getting their own policies, getting underwritten on their own merit, and then fast forwarding 20 years till they're in their highest earning years and being able to be fully protected at a current rate with the ability to buy more is huge compared to, like you said, these group policies that at any point a hospital system could go into a budget crunch and say, we're going to take you from 15,000 a month of benefit to 8,000 of benefit.
Right.
And now you can kind of control your own path based on your income rather than relying on what the hospital system is giving you.
Right. I look at something. I turned 40 years old this past year, and I'm not quite the full picture of health. I'm 99%.
You're pretty healthy.
99%. But no, so you turn 40, you start to realize just stuff starts to change, right? Yeah. And I think when we look at these things and you look at your career and you look at everything in there, my kids are growing up. You never know if all of a sudden you might want something different, right? So if your job's in Wisconsin, where I grew up, I don't know that I could still be handling those Wisconsin winters. Florida's pretty nice. Right. 72 degrees feels great. Yeah. I was in the Gulf of Mexico today, right? And so when I look at that stuff, I think the other important piece that we just try to tell these young physicians is you need to be able to control your outcomes. When I hear someone say, I work there because of the benefits, so in a way, that's great. It's a great testament to that employer, right? They did a great job taking care of that individual. But what I hear is I could go make more money somewhere else, maybe be happier somewhere else, do something else that I could do. But because I didn't get these things set up on my own, I'm forced to stay here and whatever this is. Right. And I hate hearing that. So again, work somewhere because you want to work somewhere because you belong somewhere, work somewhere because you're happy working there. And the way you make sure that you're able to do that is these outside factors don't come in effect. And for some people, it's not going to be the case, right? Where group insurance is fantastic is what if you can't go out and get your own policy? Like I said, these insurers they know what they're doing, right? They're looking behind every rock to figure out, are you a larger risk to them than they want to carry? And do they even want to accept your money? Right. To insure you. Right. And a lot of times the answer is no.
Yeah, there's a calculated risk that goes into it because they know there are a certain amount of claims that will get paid, but they need to take the best odds with people that have nothing happening right now. So if you have had anything that's happened, they're probably going to exclude it or say, we're going to pass on this.
You have to expect it. And so, the message that I would give to everyone is the younger, the healthier you are. Right. And so, again, in my mind, I actually got younger this year, right? Because I think I've heard 40 is the new 30. So when I was 39, I was pretty old, but now I've went backwards, right? So, but no, I'll never have less health history than I had today or yesterday. Yeah. It can only stay the same or get worse. So we want to make sure we're getting these things done. If maybe something's there, again, maybe getting a policy where even if they are excluding something, at least you have a policy where everything else is covered. But yeah, those are the things to have. I tell everyone that they need to, if they have a health history in a certain area, you have to expect the insurer to say, we may not want to insure you if something happens to you based on that. Right. And that makes sense.
It does. Bart, this was really insightful today. I appreciate you taking the time to explain some of this to us and to the viewers. I think that people really don't have a good grasp in general on how disability insurance works. And it would be great to kind of put more information out there. And I know in the future through this podcast, we're going to try to get that message delivered.
Fantastic. And Disability Insurance Awareness Month, love doing this. I think it's a great topic that everyone at at those earlier stages or earliest stages of their career, again, it should be something that we all make sure we put a little emphasis on getting done.
Perfect.
Thanks, Mike.
So thank you for tuning in today. Through our shorts and our podcasts, we present a lot of information. It's really hard to get across to all viewers exactly what we're trying to go through. And everybody's situation is different. If anything resonated with you from today's show or from what you saw, feel free to reach out to us via our website, www.afgfl.com.